Hi everybody, my name is Daniel Krueger, and this is my presentation for Module 1, Levels of Government. A little bit of personal information about me. I'm married, I have 2 children, Gavin who's 4 years old, Tristan who's 1 year old. I live about an hour outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and some hobbies I like to do when I'm not teaching. I'm going to spend a lot of time this summer gardening and going to the beach on the Jersey Shore. This is a picture of my classroom. I teach at North Penn High School. At North Penn, I teach biology and botany, and I have been teaching those subjects for the past 13 years. I'm also co-advisor of the Marine Science and Botanical Society. It's kind of this extracurricular club where I just get to work with students in our greenhouse at North Penn High School, and we work on like fish tanks and growing plants and stuff like that. And I'm taking this course in school law to pursue my master's degree in instructional technology. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the school law content questions. Alright, so schools receive support from various levels of our government. If we receive the smallest amount of support from the federal government. So the contributions, like the funding that we receive from the federal government is between like 8 and 10%, because education is primarily the responsibility of the state and the local. All right. When you get down to the local, or the state level of government, they're funding slightly less than 50% of the school's funding, which leaves more than 50% of the school funding up to the local level of government. That money is collected primarily by collecting property taxes from households and businesses. All right. So who is in charge of these various levels regarding the education? So at the federal level, you have Miguel Cardona, who's the Secretary of Education. He gets paid for this position. And the Secretary of Education at the federal level have several responsibilities, such as creating policies on federal aid, monitoring federal aid and dispersing it, collecting data on U.S. schools, and then communicating or disseminating research. Right. At the state level, I'm in Pennsylvania, so we have the governor of PA, who's Tom Wolf, and he's paid for being the governor, but one of his duties is to appoint a Pennsylvania Secretary of Education, who is Noe Ortega, who is also paid for his work as the state Secretary of Education. Right. Some of the responsibilities of this position are to develop, oversee, and monitor state programs for school reform. Right? Establish educational standards. So I'm constantly following like the science standards for 9th and 10th grade students that were developed for the state of Pennsylvania. And then finally, determine the boundaries. So for the districts, so in Pennsylvania, we currently have like 500 school districts that have boundaries. At the local level, each of the 500 school districts is governed by a school board, which is usually elected into that position, or made up of individuals who are elected into that position. This is a volunteer position, so the school board members aren't getting paid for their services. And the responsibilities include electing a superintendent who's going to act as a CEO for the schools, establish the curriculum, hire personnel, and decide when schools should be constructed or closed or consolidated. All right. So if we look at component 6.1, in this component, we're going to evaluate, develop, and implement management, communication, technology, school-level governments, and operation systems that support each of the students' learning needs and promote mission and vision of the school. All right. So this is most influenced by the local government or the school board. This component focuses on like school level governance. And I think that the school board will have most to do with that, as well as like determining the overall vision and the mission of the school. Right. If we take a look at component 6.2, this one says to evaluate, develop, and advocate for a data-informed and equitable resource plan that supports school improvement and student development. This is, again, I think is mostly influenced by local government, just because it's talking about equitable resource plan, and the local government is responsible for more than 50% of the school's funding. Having that said, even though this is most influenced by local government, I think that the state also plays a significant role in this component as well. And then finally, if we look at component 6.3, it says reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. I think this is most influenced by the state government. It's the state government that's responsible for overseeing and ruling on decisions that involve like public schools in their state. And this component is all about policies and regulations. So how does all of this support the educational success and well-being of each student and adult? Right. I think it's great that each level of the government plays a role in supporting education. It just shows that our government values education if it's supporting it at various levels. Now, it also allows the schools to draw funds from multiple resources. Right. Even though the role of federal government has like increased in recent years, still the majority of the power comes from state and local governments. This is beneficial because it allows each state or district to make decisions based on the needs of their students and their communities. So for my CLO correlation, I thought this assignment directly correlated to the three course learning objectives because I was able to look at the resources that were provided to determine the level of influence that each level of government had for the learning objectives. All right. All of the CLOs were about the supporting needs of students and distributing resources equitably, as well as passing laws or creating policies and regulations based on the students' needs. So each level of the government was able to work towards those objectives to various degrees. So how did this assignment improve my understanding of the three levels of government? So it helped me understand that, the federal government plays like the smallest role in supporting education, but I kind of knew that offhand, so I knew that the federal government kind of left it up to the states to determine the education. Right, but for this assignment, it was relevant to my current learning because, first of all, I was very interested to read how the federal government's role has changed over time, and recently, the federal government has played a bigger role in states or in education in general. And it's also important to see how people in the state and the local governments can kind of make a difference and influence the educational process. So how will this assignment change the way I teach and learn? This assignment helped me understand how education is supported by the government. It's nice to know the educational system is valued and is supported at all levels. How will this assignment influence the decisions that you'll make as a future school leader? All right. Really, I was going through this lesson, and I thought a little bit bad that I'm not more involved in the school board meetings. I feel like I don't go to the meetings enough to like voice my opinions and my concerns, because those individuals who are elected to the school board could really make a difference. All right. I was also a little ashamed to realize that I didn't know who the school board members like were off the top of my head, so I had to look them up. In the future, I really want to become better acquainted with the members of our school board, and when it comes election time, make sure I do my due diligence and know a little bit more about these individuals that are going to be making important decisions for our schools. All right, and then finally, here are the references I used to make this presentation, and here are a few more references. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Bye.